During his prime ministership, I urged Mr. Lee Hsien Loong to be a good leader who takes Singapore to a new and higher level. In my book, Never on Bended Knees, I have repeatedly urged Mr. Lee to be a transformative leader that our nation needs. He can choose to open up the system in Singapore and seal his legacy as an enlightened statesman, or he can continue running the country through intimidation and fear. Alas, he chose the latter. As a result, our economy is still struggling in the face of high costs and low productivity. Mr. Lee himself admitted that the PAP government had maxed out on easy ways of growing the economy. And by easy ways, it meant just opening our doors to foreigners and foreign capital. In fact, Business Times published a Bloomberg report that said in 2022 alone, the country attracted $435 billion in new money, or about 70% of its GDP. This approach attracts money laundering activities, especially from China. It used to come from Indonesia. The Bloomberg report I just cited reminded us that Singapore washing is just a new iteration of an old problem. The city was once referred to as Indonesia's money laundromat. So through his prime ministership, Singapore has degenerated from once being a powerful trading nation built by a proud people to becoming a money laundering center and a tax haven that the Financial Times likens to the Cayman Islands. Domestically, even though Mr. Lee promised that no one would be left behind, 20 years ago in 2004 when he was sworn in as Prime Minister, hundreds and even thousands of Singaporeans are still left homeless today, with tens of thousands more struggling on a salary of $1,300 or less. Under his watch, GST was raised twice, once from 5 to 7% and then now from 7 to 9%. And there was debacle after debacle, from the hepatitis C outbreak at the SGH, which killed several people, to the clearing of forests in error, to the abysmal spectacle of Tan Chuan Jin remaining as Speaker for years, even after he knew Tan was having an affair with a fellow PAP MP. All this time, his administration continued to prosecute citizens for exercising their constitutional rights to free speech. Defamation suits were repeatedly employed that silenced critics. His Home Affairs Minister introduced POFMA, which allows the government to accuse opponents and critics of publishing falsehoods, further chilling criticism of his administration. As a result, many academics, website operators, and activists have relocated to other countries. He also amended the constitution that denied Dr. Chan Cheng Bok from running a second time for the presidency, and one that saw Halimah Yacob becoming president without a contest. He controversially appointed his personal lawyer, Lucien Wong, as Attorney General. Two members of his cabinet, Mr. Shanmugam and Dr. Balakrishnan, rented huge government bungalows which incensed Singaporeans who continue to live in cramped HDB estates. I could go on and on. The tragic part in all this is that it happened when Singapore needed to go in a different direction. Even his party mate, Mr. Giorgio, warned, we must recognize that there is widespread unhappiness about the government. It is not only about specific policies. It's more than that. And we cannot allow those emotions to be bottled up. We need a transformed PAP. Now, I don't think we have seen a transformed PAP, have we? And I think it is fair to say that Mr. Lee's two-decade tenure as Prime Minister was largely a squandered one. I take this opportunity to urge the new Prime Minister, Lawrence Wong, not to go in that same direction. Singapore, now more than ever, needs a new direction to graduate into a higher plane of development so that we can attain a new and more hopeful era. Gone are the days when authoritarian control can be justified. Society has progressed, times have changed, and the people want openness and transparency. They want to be reasoned with, not talked down to. They demand a more democratic system, one where the government punishes and censors less and listens more. In his tenure, Mr. Wong needs to do the following. 1. Amend the Newspaper Printing and Presses Act to allow a free media to develop. The only other countries in the world to maintain such a tight grip on the media are the North Koreas, the Vietnams, and the Irans of the world. 2. Stop prosecuting activists for exercising their constitutional rights of freedom of speech and expression. 3. Stop intimidating and silencing academics and critics by abolishing POFMA, a really bad law. 4. Divest GLCs and take the government out of business world so that the domestic private sector and Singapore and SMEs can thrive and turn Singapore into a truly innovative powerhouse instead of becoming an attraction for money launderers of the world. 5. And most importantly, make the coming GE an open and transparent one. Allow the main contesting parties and independent observers oversight of the Election Boundaries Committee as they redraw constituencies, and give at least 3 weeks for the elections instead of the minimum 9 days. There are weighty issues to be canvassed and debated, and 9 days is hardly sufficient. Voters need that 3 weeks to understand and digest what contesting parties have to say and what the alternatives are for Singapore. As I urged Mr. Lee before, I do the same now with Lawrence Wong. Don't just be a clever politician. Be a wise leader. For a politician focuses on the next election, but a true and courageous leader focuses on the next generation. Be on the right side of history.